Good morning, Facebook friends. Helen Archontou here, CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. Hope you're having a wonderful day. It's Thursday, and as you know from being a friend of YWTV, Thursday is a day that we share the mic with Black women in our community to help amplify their voices. And we have a real community leader, activist, just an all-around wonderful friend with us today. So pleased and grateful that Lynne Algrant could join us. I'm going to share a little bit about Lynne for anyone, whether you know her or don't know her. There's so much in her background of what she's done. I'm sure there's something to learn. Lynne Algrant is the Vice President for Planning, Development, and Communication at Greater Bergen Community Action. Prior to that position, she joined that organization in July of 2020. She was the CEO of Bergen Volunteers for 5 years. In January of 2017, she was named one of the 17 people to watch in 2017 by the Bergen Record and NorthJersey.com. And in 2020, she was awarded the Community Service Award by the County Executive, the Board of Chosen Freeholders, and the Bergen County African American Advisory Committee. From 2010 to 2015, Lynne served as a council member at large for the city of Englewood and was elected by her peers to serve as council president for 2 years. While serving the city of the Englewood City Council, she chaired the Environmental Commission and spearheaded the Sustainable Jersey Certification Program, acquiring the bronze status. In addition to all of that, Lynne served as the Mayor's Finance Commission on the Mayor's Finance Commission and on the Englewood Economic Development Corporation. She also, because she's got spare time somewhere in all of that, founded H10A Consulting, a practice focused on issues of leadership and effectiveness. And she's just an amazing community leader, especially in the nonprofit community, mentors and supports so many. And we're so grateful to have you here. Welcome, Lynne. Happy New Year.
New Year. It's nice to be with you. Hello, Facebook friends.
Our Facebook community is eagerly waiting to hear. Tell us about this new position. I mean, this was a big jump, a big exciting move for you.
Yes, it is a big exciting move for me. I went from an organization with 13 staff members to an organization with nearly 600 staff. So Greater Bergen Community Action is part of the Community Action Network across the nation. They were founded out of the War on Poverty legislation in the mid-'60s. And each one has a sort of geographic area. So we are Greater Bergen in part because our main programming is Head Start, early childhood programming. And we also we run Head Start in Paterson, New Jersey, Bergen County, and Jersey City. So hence the Greater Bergen part. But we run a number of traditional anti-poverty programs. The low-income heating assistance program we manage in this area. We have a high school equivalency program. We run citizen and ESL classes, the weatherization program. So a lot of things that the federal government has sort of directed as anti-poverty work. But in addition, Greater Bergen has built affordable housing in our community. We are the redevelopment authority for the Garfield River to Rail district, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And we founded a credit union, the first new credit union in New Jersey in 25 years. So we're really branching out. What's exciting for me is that Greater Bergen sees anti-poverty work as more systemic and structural, and about investing in communities and investing in people. And so at this point in my life, in the middle of the pandemic, it felt like an important move for me to be able to work with an organization that is so big and has such a far reach, with the opportunity to really make meaningful impact, in Bergen County. And it is a place I wasn't expecting Bergen County to become my home, but it really has been in so many powerful ways, and I'd like to be able to leave something meaningful behind at this sort of swan song in my career. You hit mid to late 50s, and all of a sudden you start thinking about, how do you want to, what do you want to do next? And I'm sort of at that place in my life.
Well, my God, there's so much in there. I don't know where to jump to first from what you said, but the one thing, because it's clearly at the core of the work that you're doing now, but it's also really at the core when I think about the trajectory of your whole career is this, anti-poverty work and, really working, at the systemic point of it. When you look back at your work in that area, how has it changed? And, how do you, now at this stage, having all the information you have, how do you, what's your thought on how we can have the biggest impact in really addressing it? Because here we are still doing the work.
Right, exactly, right? You think that the war on poverty was declared in 1966, 1967, and here we are, still struggling with this. And I think, so I'll answer your question in a couple of ways. I think early in my career, and I started out in independent school education and working to help low-income kids and kids of color get access to some of the finest educations on the planet, right? And I loved that work and I believed in it very greatly. But it was one person at a time, right? And one institution at a time. And we really need to be working on transforming school systems, right? Because we're not going to be able to just work with one kid at a time. And so I've always been a supporter of public education. There's a group of us doing some work with the faculty in Englewood around trauma-informed care and trauma-informed pedagogy, because we've got to help schools be able to reach kids where they are and take them where they can go, right? And so a whole school system is some of the things that we need to think about. But as I've grown and matured and lived in different places, what really comes across, Helen, is how intricately intertwined these issues are. I remember once reading a study that said, are people poor because they're sick, or are they sick because they're poor, right? We have all these chicken and the egg issues that are so hard to pull apart. And so that's why really looking at systems change, right, and structural change, and it's such an exciting time because we are talking about structure, right, and we are talking about systems. Some of it's coming out of the Black Lives Matter work, right, and really looking at the structure of police forces. But we also need to look at the structure of school funding, right? As long as it's tied to real estate and housing and property taxes, then we're always going to have districts that are have-haves and have-nots because of the way that we populate our communities. So one of the things about Bergen County, right, is that poverty is pretty easily hidden in our community, right? And depending on which roads you go on and which towns you frequent, you might not see it. And I feel like the pandemic has been like a high beam flashlight on the cracks in the foundation that have always been in our community, but they could be pretty well masked over. And so Bergen County is actually a pretty difficult place to be poor. And the reasons for that are housing is expensive, childcare is expensive, public transportation is pretty much non-existent, right? And so there is work here, and there's good work here in Bergen County, but it's not easy for people to be able to get to it, right? It's not easy for people to be able to live in a place where they can get to the work. And so we have really deep, complicated challenges around poverty. And then the other thing that happens in Bergen County, because we're made up of 70 wonderful, beautiful small towns, it's often very hard to find the services that you need. And so they exist here in Bergen County, but they're doled out to a lot of us different nonprofits. And so there isn't like kind of a, oh, if I can just get to, Bergen County Plaza, right, the county building, I'll be able to get help because, the Board of Social Services is in Rochelle Park, right? And that's where you apply for food stamps. And that's, and then you have to go someplace else to try and get a housing voucher. So we don't make it easy for people to navigate the resources that are already here. And then I think we need to begin thinking more on a community-wide level about what are the challenges and the structures and the systems that keep people down. So I'll tell you one thing that I've learned since I've been at Greater Bergen. Because so many of the programs that we run have federal or state funding, right? There are a lot of eligibility requirements. There are a lot of forms to fill out. It can be bureaucratic and clunky because we have to do a lot of reporting on taxpayer dollars, which is what we're using. But one of the things that's so intense is that the eligibility requirements for many federal poverty programs are not scaled to cost of living in the community. They're based on the federal poverty level, which is the same across the entire United States. And so while everybody's poor at $26,000 a year, you're also really struggling in Bergen County at $30,000 a year, right? The United Way Alice indicator says that in Bergen County, you kind of need to make $65,000 a year just to make sure that something doesn't wipe you out, right? And so many of the programs that we run, we can't help the people in between that area. They're not eligible. And so you can make $1 more than the eligibility requirement, and suddenly you don't qualify for subsidy for childcare, or you don't qualify for Head Start. So we put people in this real bind because it's not, because it's always a cliff, right, instead of a slope. And I think we really need to begin thinking about policies that don't provide runway, right? So you get a promotion and now all of a sudden you're putting your eligibility for some other services that you get in jeopardy, but your promotion's not enough to suddenly not need a housing subsidy for an apartment in Bergen County. Absolutely no way. So those are some of the big things that I think about. I don't have any answers right now. It's a lot of lobbying, I guess, and advocacy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing the complexity of it all, because I'm not sure, sometimes I think, people that are not working in the systems like, we do, look at the problems, watch the news and think that it's a simple fix, but that the what you're detailing is the level of planning, of true planning boards looking at even the issue of putting one department in a different town than where the rest of the services are is actually an impediment, for folks to be able to get the services, readily, accessible. So, you really shed a light on the complexity of it all and why, it really, it takes systems, high level systems working together, to be able to get at this. One of the pieces you talked about at your work now at Greater Bergen, and you just kind of touched on it again in terms of, how we set, folks up, unfortunately for some failure, I believe, is our childcare system. We have a new, and the YWCA's of Northern New Jersey is connected to it, but we have a new initiative statewide, thanks to ACNJ, about reimagining childcare right now and really trying to put a focus on that. Can you speak a little bit about the childcare issue? Because, again, over this last year, there has been such a focus on the law enforcement system, and rightly so. But as you're sharing, the education system, the childcare system, these are all systems that are equally as broken and, riddled with racism and riddled with, just overwhelmed with issues that are need to be addressed.
Absolutely. And, I think we always known that the childcare system was kind of broken, but it was pieced together with bubblegum and masking tape and loving people who would take children into their home, and as a nation, right, as a community, we have basically decided that childcare is not essential until all of a sudden we realize how essential it is. So a few weeks ago, the New Jersey Commissioner of Education and the head of the Economic Development Authority had a webinar on the importance of childcare to the economy. So now all of a sudden we're realizing how important it is, right? But are we willing to really invest in it, right? The childcare business, and it is a business, and it's a business that many women of color are childcare providers, right? And childcare employees, and they don't make enough money. Yeah. And the subsidies for families that can't afford, market rate childcare doesn't reimburse centers in order for people to make enough money. And so we have an army of workers in our economy who are working really hard, probably more than 40 hours a week, quite honestly, and yet they still are living in poverty. The margins on childcare are so low. And at the same time, if there isn't quality, affordable childcare, people can't go to work. So I've been wrestling with, Helen, and I'm sure that you saw this statistic too, that in the month of December, 100% of the jobs lost, 100% of the jobs lost were jobs held by women.
Yeah.
And we had 140,000 jobs lost in December, which kind of sent the economists in a tizzy. They thought that there was going to be maybe 70,000 jobs created. And then when they dug into those numbers, 156,000 women lost their jobs and 16,000 men got jobs. So it's even worse than it looked like. And this is on top of 885,000 women who dropped out of the workforce in September. So without adequate childcare, right, women can't go to work.
Yeah.
And some of us are blessed that we can do this remote work thing. And I'm doubly blessed because I have a high school senior and a college senior, and they can manage their homework and their online classes on their own. But if you have young kids, if you have a job where you can't phone in, right, or Zoom into work, and there's no childcare, and right now schools aren't open, right, there's no there.
Yeah.
And I don't think we value the importance to the economy that women are. I don't think we value the importance to household finances that women are. And so we've got to really reimagine the economy if we want to make it possible for women to go to work and to contribute in all of the ways that they do. And I believe that the linchpin there is childcare, right? And are we going to see the kinds of investments in childcare that we really need, as opposed to investments in manufacturing or in road building? I don't know. I'm hoping that these new voices in Congress, right, are going to start to lift up some of these issues. I mean, that's where representation matters, right? To have working moms now, sitting in policymaking rooms makes a difference. It really does make a difference. But yeah, childcare, and women's work is, I think, has to become. We've got to figure out what the right hashtag is, right? But that's something that I think we really need to start championing, because it's too easy for it to fade away, as we've seen in the last 10 months.
Yes. And, for those of you watching, just know we will have an upcoming show that's going to focus on the Reimagining Childcare initiative that's happening here in the state of New Jersey, that we're, as I said, the YWCA is, partnering and supporting. I do agree with you fully that it is the linchpin to fixing, the numbers that we're seeing, the staggering numbers that we're seeing. And they're unfortunately only going to increase because this, situation that we're in is not resolving itself tomorrow. So it's only going to snowball. And as Natalie, actually one of our viewers, has commented just now how COVID really has highlighted the systems, but that there really has been no regard placed on childcare or education prior to COVID. And that's really why we're in this situation that, this is, as you said, it's putting a real spotlight on what we know. So you said something else just now, which I want to jump into because it does connect to, you and your work in our community all these years. We talked about representation, and we talked about having, women and mothers and working women, in places that were making decisions. You have been in the position that you've been on a city council, and you've been the head as well. And, I've talked recently to, we had Romney Rice on Share the Mic recently as well. And we were talking about, 5 years ago, one of the real pushes that we did was get women to run for office, get, Black women and women of color to run for office. And we did this real push to get women to run for office. And I know over the last year or two, I've been listening to a lot of the women that we really pushed to run for office. And I'm not sure that, well, I should say, I know, it's not even, I'm not sure. I know that they've not really been supported the way that they needed to be able to, affect change in these roles. So we've gotten them, we've gotten some seats filled, but, are we really able to make a difference? And I know you've had the experience that you've been in one of those seats. What was that like for you as a Black woman and, being in one of those roles? And what is your advice for women of color, Black women, women of color that are in these roles now to try to persevere? Because they really are carrying, a heavy responsibility on top of a load of, in terms of being able to push forward all we're talking about, because it's, they have the comment, they have the experience to speak to it, but they don't have the support to necessarily push the agendas needed.
Right. So the first thing that I want to say is that it is, and as the events of last week have pointed out to us, it is an infinitely trickier place to be in public life now because of the internet, because of, obviously it existed and Facebook was there and all that sort of stuff when I was serving on the council. But, even in the 5 years since I left elected office, I think the language and the vitriol and the nastiness, right, has just ramped up. And we probably all know where that comes from, but even still. And so that makes it that much tougher, right? Because some advice that I want to give to, to people who are thinking about running for office or are serving in office is, you really can't take it personally, right? There's going to be, the days when everybody was mad at me were typically the days when I thought, okay, I probably made the right decision, right? Because it's not clean and it's not easy. And I will tell you, like, I'm a person that likes to be liked, right? I don't like people, being mad at me. And so that can be really tough, right? To be sort of scrutinized in that way. And yet you have to kind of set your compass on true north, right? And sort of stick to your principles and know that the people who love you and keep them around you. And if you need more love, get a dog or a cat, right? Because it's probably not going to come from public life, unfortunately. I will tell you, those of you who are thinking about it or are in that role, there is no one more popular than a former politician, right? And so as soon as I stopped being on the council, people would stop their cars in the street if I was out walking the dog, or I'd bump into them in the parking lot, like, where are you? When are you coming back? And it's like, you never had a nice thing to say to me, the entire 6 years I was on the council. And it's like, well, I gave you a hard time, but I gave you a hard time because, I knew you wanted to do the right thing. So it's like, okay, but like a little bit of praise, a little bit of thank you in there would have been nice. Hyper-local politics are a really weird mixed bag, right? Because it's about getting the garbage picked up and the snow plowed and the right programs at the rec center, right? We don't really get to make big policy necessarily in our towns. Although I will tell you, a lot of the issues that are coming down the pike are like, are we going to allow affordable housing to be built in our community? And the answer should be a resounding yes. And yet we still have a lot of communities that are hesitant about affordable housing because they don't recognize the face of who needs affordable housing, right? It's the senior citizen in your community who wants to downsize because they can no longer handle shoveling or raking the leaves. It's your best friend's kid who just came out of college and has a nice job, right? But it's their first job and they can't afford market rate apartments in our area. It's your favorite barista in your coffee shop, and it's the small business owner in your community, maybe the person who runs your dry cleaner or who runs your nail salon. And so we need to change the picture of who people see when they hear the words affordable housing. And I would hope that different representation on councils would begin to push that issue, right? Because then that childcare provider can live in your community, right? And maybe walk to work and provide excellent childcare for others in your community. So there are some big issues that local officials can champion. And then the other thing that you have is you have a platform to advance causes. So I joined the council in 2010. I was an Obama inspired, whatever, kumbaya person. But it was also right in the middle of the Great Recession. Mm-hmm. And at the very time that I joined the council, there was a group of taxpayers in Englewood who kind of organized themselves, and they really wanted to rein in taxes. And their website was "Don't Bankrupt Us." And so budgets during that period of time were really tough, right? Can we keep taxes flat, but improve services? There are important things, right, that are in a budget. The library hours are in a budget. We need to keep the library open because not everybody has a quiet room to go to read, right? We needed to keep the summer jobs program that the city funded. It's $40,000. It's a drop in the bucket, but a paid job for a high school kid in Englewood was crucial. And so there were things that we could fight for and principles that we could stand up for within our community. And then the question is, can we get together with other local elected officials to push the state to create policies for us? And then can we push for policies coming out of the federal government that support small towns like us? There isn't a lot, especially in Bergen County, because our towns are so small. The federal government never writes anything directly for us. It has to go through the state and then maybe the county. And so a lot of our challenges aren't necessarily on anybody's radar unless we put them on people's radar.
Well, I thank you. I have to say that the issue that you shared too, which I think is so important for us to remember when you go into public office, that you really have to have a circle from somewhere to lift you up and give you that love, because these are, even, being in the nonprofit roles and, trying to push forward policy or being in an elected role. I mean, it's a very tough environment. One of our viewers asked the question, which I think is important. Meg Kelly is asking, as a working mom, how do we help advocate for some of these things that, you're mentioning, Lynn? Where is a place for her? And, I would say one of the places is to get involved with organizations like the YWCA in Northern New Jersey and other, organizations like ours that I believe are really focused on, trying to push initiatives to support, women, to support moms, and to work on eliminating racism, because quite frankly, these are, we have to teach. I always say we have to teach moms how to stand up for each other and, stand up for the mom next to you that maybe looks different than you and has a different life experience, but, your voice can lend a lot of power to that, supporting that family.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I think we have to care about the education of somebody else's child as much as we care about the education of our own, right? And if we could begin to think that way, what policies and procedures and things would we be willing to pay for, right? And these are investments. We know this, right? A child that has a head start and has a good education, all the research shows it pays back to society 13 times more than what we put into it. So I think I think one of the challenges is I don't think enough people really understand these issues. And so one thing that I would ask people to do is to get involved, to become informed, and then talk about it. We don't have water coolers anymore, in your Zoom calls, over your coffee clutch, because it is going to require, I always say this in the Bergen Leads program that I've been so honored to be a part of for 14 years now. The people we think of as leaders are rarely lead, right? They're weather vanes. And whichever way the wind is blowing, that's the direction that they're going to go in. So I think we need to create a lot of weather around this issue of affordable, quality childcare at every price point. Mm-hmm. And if we can create that kind of weather, that kind of noise, right, then leaders, right, elected officials are going to say, whoa, wait a minute, this is a big deal. We better be paying attention to this. I think that again, the pandemic has demonstrated that the interrelatedness of these things. We are not going to come out of this pandemic recession if we can't figure out a way to help women back into the workforce. We're just not, right? And so we need to be championing that. And so what is it that women need in order to be able to go back into the workforce, no matter what their job is, right? And to be sane, right, in doing it. Because this isn't going to be the last time that we're going to find ourselves like having to jump into this remote kind of thing. I don't know, but we need to create weather, right? And so we really need to, so that we can push those weather vanes in the direction that makes sense for us and for our lives and for the communities that we care about. And so, we're starting to do that at Greater Bergen. You can follow my LinkedIn page. You can follow our the Greater Bergen LinkedIn page. We're really starting to put some thought leadership language out there to help people understand what the issues are and how complex the issues are. Because, and I learned this as a city council person, sometimes things look sort of self-evident, right? And they're not. And so we really need to help people to be really informed about who is eligible for food stamps and how much do they get? Right. And can you really feed a family on it? Mm-hmm. And what are all the products that you cannot buy with food stamps, right? That, so we've designed these programs that give people just enough help to bob up and down, but not necessarily enough help to be able to float. Yeah. And that, that's pretty heartbreaking. And it's always been there, but I think the pandemic, because it's thrown so many more people into this situation, and people who never realized, right, what it was like, and friends of people who never realized what it was like. So I think we have the chance now to really open up that box and really look at what's going on, and create some weather and get elected officials to start paying attention.
Well, this has been such an amazing conversation, Lynne. I appreciate it. And, the last few of these that I've done, I keep feeling like that there needs to be the part 1 and the part 2, because there's so much more to discuss. But, you and I will keep talking, and we'll keep figuring out ways to bring you and these conversations to our community. And, Meg Kelly is saying that she's going to connect with you. And we've been flashing, and we have it in the comments, the information, the websites and social media connections, so you can connect to Greater Bergen. And, as Lynne said, you can connect with her also on LinkedIn. I also encourage you, as I said, to reach out to us. And I'm glad to see that you got involved with Garfield Neighbors, and she's been writing to her representatives. And, I always say this, I teach, and I know you're involved in teaching too. And, we really need to raise the next generation and continue to support them and encourage them that, talking to your representatives that we've put in office, whether or not you voted for them, they work for you, and making sure that they know how you feel, whether it's through an email, a letter, or phone call, on every issue that's important to you is key, in terms of getting attention to this. So, Meg, I'm glad to see that you are now writing to your state representatives, and the organization. I know she's asking also where she can get some sample letters so that she could send to them. If you connect to different organizations, and Lynn and I and our organizations and others very often on these issues will provide a kind of a skeleton that you can work off of and fill in your own personal information on specific issues. So definitely, keep connected to advocacy organizations, because we know that, people want to help, and that's one of the ways we can help them help is giving them some of the language, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lynne, thank you so much again for being with us. And we'll keep watching you and the work that you're doing in the community. And, each stage that you've evolved to has had a big impact, for all of our communities. So I'm so excited to see where and what you are going to continue to do, in your new position. We'll still call it new,
for another week or so, right? Exactly.
For another week or so. For those of you watching, I wanted to make sure that you have your calendars marked, as we know that Monday is the day that we observe Dr. Martin Luther King Day, and there's so many wonderful celebrations happening in our community, and I hope that you can take some time to connect to some of them. At 10 a.m. on Monday, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee of Ridgewood Glenrock is celebrating his life and legacy. We have links and opportunities for you to sign up for all of these programs. They're all being done virtually right now, so there's a great opportunity for you to watch it, safely from your home, and to participate at 6 p.m. also on Monday. We have the Martin Luther King Birthday Committee of Bergen County, and they have a wonderful program planned also with guest speakers and musical performances. The YWCA of Northern New Jersey supports both of these committees through our team, and we do encourage you to connect to both of these events. They're both going to be really moving and important for honoring Dr. King. From 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., if you have a youth in your life that you would like to, that's obviously going to be off school, and it's a great opportunity to connect them. The Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commemorative Commission Youth Conference is happening, and we will have the link so that you can sign up your child for that. And tomorrow we have a very special YWTV at 11 a.m. We have a student performer, Emmanuel Osandu, who will be doing our tribute to Dr. King, reading letters from a Birmingham jail. And he's amazing. And I do encourage you to watch it. I encourage you to pull your children next to you when you're watching it. The beautiful thing about YWTV, and even this interview today with Lynn, if someone in your life, didn't get to watch it because they couldn't watch it live today, they can watch it later. You can share the link with them. You can send it, post it on your Facebook page. You can email it out. But this lives on our Facebook page and lives on our YouTube channel. So opportunities like watching tomorrow's event as well with your children, and gather them together. You can do it on the weekends. You can do it at some point on Monday. But we do encourage you to, at some point this weekend, although you should definitely do it all year long, is keep Dr. King's dream alive and participate in one of these events. And with that, I thank you all for spending the time with us today. Lynn, thank you so much again for this really rich and important conversation we had. Clearly, you even had all of our guests, firing. You have me firing, and I'm really looking forward to working with you now in your new role. And so happy that we have you here. With such a treasure for our community.
Thank you, Helen, and thanks for all the great work you guys are doing.
Everyone have a great day, and we will see you soon.